All right, and as earlier mentioned that we would hit the kitchen, not to worry, we'll still do that. We have we're here up until 10 a.m. and so towards the last 30 minutes of the program we'll be doing the Tasty Wednesday segment. But before that, we also need to have a conversation on what I had mentioned earlier on matters relationships, and we speak of answering the questions or answering the whys in gender-based violence. It is prevalent. And it's even worse that a majority of people still hide in their own cocoons. They do not opt to go out there and report these cases. Today, in fact, the cases that are being reported even more are those ones that have gone to levels that we can't reverse, that someone has killed so-and-so because of this, because of, you know, the violence that was at home. And in most cases you'll hear people saying they know this is not the first time that they're having these quarrels. It was there, it was prevalent, but it's just that people did not opt out, just that people did not report, and then we end up losing lives. We still are talking about Tirop, who was just buried the other day because of crimes of passion. They all culminate from gender-based violence. They all culminate from violence at the family setup, you know, at a relationship setup. And so it's important that we have conversations revolving around the same, so that moving forward we get to have people coming out to speak out, and together we are able to limit the cases of gender-based violence. It's a pleasure to have Jennifer Mudoga, who's a psychological counselor, for this particular conversation. Karibu sana ma'am.
Thank you so much.
All right, and here we are. Gender-based violence. Sometimes it's actually violence meted upon you, but you do not even know. Sometimes we all think that violence has to go to the physical level. We ignore the emotional violence. We ignore verbal violence. And in most cases, it lands us to places where we really cannot reverse.
It's so true. Actually, for most people, they don't even recognize that they are being their rights are being violated, and we are having a lot of emotional. By the time it's physical, it started emotional. Yeah. It started verbal. So the victim is already so crushed. So by the time it's physical, it's already gone too far. Yes.
And so in this case, what efforts are being put to get people, first of all, understanding what violence is in this case, and taking it even a notch higher, what then do we mean when we speak of gender-based violence?
Gender-based violence is any harm perpetuated against a person because of their gender, because of their sexual orientation, and their identity, sexual identity. So a lot of, in fact, for most people, when we talk about gender-based violence, they think of women, because most of the cases are against women, seeing that they are the weaker sex. And we are having a lot of issues because even men are being violated. So it is that harm that causes psychological, physical, emotional turmoil or wounds. And some of these wounds, of course, will not be seen physically. Yeah. So that's basically what gender-based violence is all about. Yes.
Back to my question, how do we get people to understand what violence really is? Because like we say, there are instances that you do not even know that this is violence that is being meted upon you. You wait until someone is physical is when you can say, oh, alini chapa, and maybe you take that bold step. And even worse for men, who will always opt to keep silent because it's shameful for a man to experience any form of violence from a lady, because men are trained or are wired or are supposed to be strong. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are not loud enough as a country, and even if these things are coming, they are coming out way too late, and most people are quiet. We've been trained. A woman has to be submissive, has to be quiet, we don't shout, so people go quiet on these things. But there are quite a number of organizations, institutions, churches, even in schools, we are having groups who are able to penetrate into schools and lay it out clear. And because we are having a lot of these things happening, especially in our learning institutions, in the university, in colleges, that's where it's worst hit. And we are finding there's a lot that is happening. But I must say, it's sad that we are not doing enough to educate people. Yes.
Stigma in society. Well, I'll tell you this. Throughout my life, I've had so much information, and I have been given proper training on gender-based violence, and I know when this is violence. But again, there's a society out there that will paint a bad picture of you if this is happening, that will start backbiting you if this is happening. And so because of these cases of stigma, you find that many people do not have the boldness to go out there and report until it's too late.
Actually, look at it from this point. It starts from right at home. You tell your family members, I'm being violated, and they tell you you need to stick it out. For obvious reasons, maybe they don't want the shame in the family, and they are even asking those children, where will you take them? You can't come back home. Other things, even the religious institutions, the church, the woman is looked down on, or the man is looked down upon if they say, I want to end this relationship because it's not adding value, I'm being harassed here. So there's a lot of stigmatization. We get to the police station where they go to report, and we find there's a lot of a problem right there, because most of the people, when they get there, though nowadays we are having the police officers who've been trained in many of the stations, but we still have women who, when they get there, they are jeered upon, they are asked questions that are intimidating, and they are sent home. You go and obey your husband. You are the women who are bringing trouble, So the woman finds, where does she go? So she just goes back home until now, when their story hits the newspapers, the media, that a certain woman has been killed. So there's a lot. We are quite down, as far as protecting these women. So they can't come out.
And on instances where some have come out and they have gotten such resistance when they come out, they would choose to go back. Psychologically and professionally, what would you say of a person who says, and I mean, in most cases you'll be given this advice, Sasa, if he's doing whatever he's doing that affects you emotionally, if he's seeing other women out, then proceed and also see other men out. If he's hitting you, then try this time around and also make that move, and also hit them. And sometimes you hit them and you realize that actually they get shocked, they cannot believe you've done that, and they also are getting scared of you, and then it becomes animosity all through. Sometimes you hit them and it actually works. So what is the worst that can happen in the event that one is advised to meet the same kind of violence to the person who's violating them in a way?
I've seen cases where when you go like on a revenge mission, and what happens is that for most people, you find the surprise factor can deter your partner. But then it could also send a signal that I need to get harder on this woman. So she thinks she's stronger than me. I'll teach her place. So it could end up even being fatal. Death can come out of it.
All right.
And I wouldn't advise anyone to go that direction. If you feel you've had enough, my advice is look for a way out.
Okay.
The which for many women or many men is so difficult because of all the stigma, difficult because they have already been brainwashed into believing that I cannot make it without this person, and the society won't accept me. Actually, the stigmatization is the huge thing here, because you are not, if you had a group of friends, they don't want to talk to you anymore. Utaiba bwana yangu, that kind of a thing, and so people find where you used to frequent together, you won't go because nobody wants you. So many people say, no, forget about it, let me just breathe it out. Yeah, so those are some of the things.
All right. For the longest of time, some African African society at large has in a way normalized that. That's where you could hear women saying that, if he doesn't beat you, he doesn't like you, and up until date, we are fighting with GBV. We are fighting with early marriages. And it's almost automatic that if this girl is so young and married to an old man or married so early, they are vulnerable. And they are likely to be violated in a huge way. I mean, how do we get ourselves off? How much of gains have we made in terms of making sure that, well, we do not normalize these ills of society so that women will look at it as though it's a normal thing to be beaten by the husband, or even vice versa?
Women are now speaking out, or men also, and it's doing a lot of good. For example, we are now telling our daughters that it's not okay to be beaten. It's not okay for someone to lock you up, for someone, because some of these crimes against women are even taking away their freedom. Like somebody makes sure that you are economically disabled so that you'll have to look up to him like forever. And when that happens, you cannot go out, you cannot meet anyone, then they sanction. You can't. I've even seen people locked up literally in the house. So what is now coming out is that we are talking, we are advising our younger sisters, our daughters. The men are talking, they are saying we are being beaten. And I'm seeing men are coming out and supporting each other, that if a man says I was beaten, the other men, instead of shaming them, they are coming out and saying, let's take action. You can go to the police station, you can go and report. Actually, there are very many cases now in the judicial system, things that are going, you know, coming out now more than ever before. Also, we are having NGOs and such organizations who are rallying against some of these things, like FGM. That one has really been there and it's loud. Fighting against early marriages, that is really working in, especially in some of these communities. In fact, like I was hearing today that some of the women who are saying, who are performing FGM now have come out to say, we have left the vice, give us something else we are able to do, which to me is a big thumbs up. So what we are talking about here is, even if we haven't been shouting hard enough, it is coming out. It is coming out. Especially with the girl child empowerment, it has really come out. Yeah.
Or telltale signs. There are instances where you start noticing, you know, red flags and telltale signs that, you know, something is amiss in this relationship, or something is amiss in this family, because you see violence can be meted, you know, to any of the family members, even if it means it's a parent to a child and all that. So what are the telltale signs for someone to know that, well, there's a problem here, and if not addressed, then this will land us to a point where, well, the man is going to get violent or the woman is going to get violent? And I mean, how else can we come in to make sure that we are able to tame this before it gets to such level? What are some of these things that one needs to look out and say, you know what, I think he behaves funny, and see, it's important that I report at this early stage?
The first thing, when this GBV is about control. And when you see somebody who wants to control your life, that's a red flag. Like, they want to know where you are every minute, who you are with, where they monitor, they stalk you. That is a sign things are not okay. When somebody has anger issues, they are not able to handle the emotions, then that is a red flag right there. The family background, and this is what most people forget to check when you enter into a relationship. How is their family? If you victims or people who've come from families that were dysfunctional, families where abuse was present, they tend to continue, they perpetuate it. So again, that is a huge telltale sign that things are going to get nasty here. Because if he's grown up seeing violence in the home, she's grown up seeing violence in the home, then it's not, unconsciously we tend to recreate what was our normal. So if that was our normal when we were growing up, if that was our normal throughout life as we know it, we tend to recreate. So those are some of the telltale signs. You'll be able to say things are going offhand. If somebody is abusing drugs or any substance of abuse, then again, if somebody is constantly under stress, they are highly likely to lose it and get violent, because they are dealing with more than what they are able to handle.
Sometimes the actions of these people then would take us to extremes, in the sense that he hits you once, or she hits you once, or abuses you once, and you're like, wow, I never saw this coming. I never expected that this would ever come. There are people who will tell you, run at that very instance. There are others who will tell you, hang in there. Maybe it was just, one of those days. What is the most noble thing to do, for instance, in this case, if physical violence is meted on a person? It's marriage. He hit you once, for the very first time. After staying with him for a long time, you go, or you have a conversation, or what?
I always say the first time it happens, you need to take action.
Okay.
If you don't take action, it will come back. That's how behavior is like.
Yes.
Anything that is rewarded is repeated, and anything that is punished, as it were, is not repeated. So I bring it out that the person needs to take an action. Go report, go maybe to the parent. You can even just say, I'm not taking this anymore. You have hit me, I will report, I'll go to the police, and you do something. Because if you don't do it that time, it will come back. They are testing waters. Yeah, they are testing water. So
right.
Yeah, we need to see that. But again, as you observe, because if you'll have by then known what kind of a person you're dealing with. So if you just put your foot down, I'm not taking this from you ever again, then be firm. I'm not saying be aggressive, but stand your ground.
We have the telltale signs, but we also have the triggers. That sometimes it's this other party that has triggered that. What needs to be done to avoid such triggers? Because there are times that, in as much as one person is not violent, you'd push them to levels. And for instance, women, how we can provoke, how we can talk, and would get a man angered to the core. So when we talk about the triggers, how do we handle our emotions? How do we handle ourselves so that we do not trigger such animosity upon us?
I always encourage people to beforehand have this talk. The time when we annoy each other, what will we do? Like I call it fighting strategies. Have that in place and look for what works for you too. Like it's okay to walk out. Like somebody has really driven you up the wall, walk out, take a walk, run, jog, come back. When the anger has subsided, then you talk at that time when you're not angry. Because, okay, I do know, like men are quick, they are not quick to talk, but they are quick to act. So we need to realize some of our gender differences. Women, we are gifted. We will talk, you hit below the belt and this guy feels I can take it no more. So we need to start understanding each other. How much is too much? What will cause this person to lose it? Right. So that at the end of the day, you are able to know what can I avoid.
Speaking then of the forms of gender-based violence, or the forms of violence that will be meted on a person, which is the worst, or each is in its own category? Because there are instances where you can do a damage that is extreme, that you can't reverse. And sometimes they say, it's even worse when you torture someone psychologically or emotionally, because you damage the inner bit of them in a way that cannot be explained. So which is the worst?
It's difficult to categorize and say this is worse than the other. Each of them is bad.
Right.
Yeah. Though I say that when you have emotionally damaged someone, then all the others follow. For most of the people, sexual violence is normally rated the worst because it affects your identity, who you see yourself as being, and you start wondering whether you are of any value. In fact, I've seen people right after such an act, they just go commit suicide. The depression sets in, nothing matters anymore. So I would say the age would really affect what it is, the violence. And of course, sexual violence is one of on the higher. Yeah.
All right. It appears that this will be looked at as something that will play out just at the home setup. But what are some of the places to avoid so that we avoid these occurrences where, you know, violence would be meted upon you, and especially for the young girls? You know, I'm told that this happens even at the level of workspaces. And I mean, these are spaces that are well guarded, well protected with rules and regulations. I mean, what do we need to do to make sure that the society is safe, or every beat that we go to is safe for individuals, safe from violence?
I say being able to report is the key to making these places safe. Organizations have put rules and regulations, but we see every so often they're being trashed. For example, in a workplace, a boss tells you, unless you follow what I'm saying, then that's it, your job is gone. And fearing that I won't have a job and I really do need this job, you just play along. So what I like telling most of the people is, it starts with you.
Right.
It really does start with you. Being able to say, I won't take this, I don't like this, this is bad, I'm not taking it. So if as my boss, you are going beyond. And you know, for some people, they don't even see it as beyond, because they are like, so what? Everybody's doing it, it's okay. It doesn't have to be that way. So if in their workplace, speak out, have these policies and have support systems. Like as ladies, what are we, if this and this happens, can we stand by each other? As guys, because it's also happening to guys in workplaces, are we able to stand up with each other? In institutions of learning, especially, I've really been having a lot of cases from our institutions of higher learning, and it is so bad. We are having rapes, date rapes, gang rapes, and shaming, using the social media to defame and to harass somebody, and it is bad. It's on another level.
Let's talk about the social media now that you mentioned it. And in our own spaces, we are actually, you find that, you know, physical violence is going lower by the day. But on these other spaces, it appears that violence, gender-based violence for that matter, is shooting up. And we have seen people go to levels of committing suicide because of the kind of violence that was meted upon them, you know, verbally, like you say, on social media. What do we need to make sure that, well, this giant that comes to us, you know, brings a lot of blessings, but also misfortunes in equal measures, is tamed, is, you know, in a way controlled, that such cannot be used to violate the rights of, say, women or certain individuals, because it is happening so much so. And this is where our young Turks are in.
We are dealing with something that is out there, and a wild animal, untamed. And the rules are there, the regulations are there on hate speech. But by the time you're able to prove that there is hate speech, there is so much damage has been done. And so it starts again with me. What material am I sharing out there about myself? Anything that you share out there about you is bound to be used. So I'm saying, be careful about stuff about you. Don't expose yourself. Even sometimes to those who are like friends, not everybody who looks like a friend is a friend. Be careful. Things that you know, somebody, if it lands in wrong hands, somebody will use it. For example, I've taken really, let's say, intimate photos, and maybe I shared with a boyfriend or something. And but the time I've just done that, I've exposed myself, because I don't even know who else will get that information. I have dealt with cases of attempted suicide because such things have gone viral, and the shame and everything. So we are talking about being able to basically work on what am I giving out there. To being able to say, even if stuff has gone out there about me, develop a tough skin. Yeah, so you've talked.
Okay.
Okay, talk. Even I join in the conversation. Let's talk about me, what you have seen. Make it look like commonplace, and the stigma starts easing off because you've talked about it. So like those pictures have gone viral, and I'm like, I did a stupid thing which nobody should do, and it has messed me up, but I hope somebody learns from this. You see, you've talked about it. So
do we need to have conversations on this? Because I feel like, you know, very many of us are getting into that space of the social media. Very many of us are getting into the spaces of marriage and relationships and all that. And sometimes we get into this with the hopes that it will be well. Sometimes we get into this without knowing that, you know, there are likelihoods that the worst that can happen, and if it happens, then you should be ready. Do we need to have these conversations as early as possible so that we know that even as you get into marriage, well, it's a beautiful thing, but anything can happen, and in the event that it happens, this is how you handle it? Because if I am to be, you know, to get trolls from the social media today, I am in the public domain, I'm in the public space, and this I am not vulnerable. I'm vulnerable and not immune to such. If such were to happen to me, and I have not had a proper conversation as to how I can guide my way out, or I can find my way out of this. Some end up committing suicide, like we said. Do we need to have early conversations on what gender-based violence is all about, and how best we can deal with all forms of gender-based violence?
we really do need to have that. Right from our primary school level, we need to talk about these things. We need to talk about it in our chamas. We need to talk about it in our institutions of higher learning. Even in the workplace, in religious organizations, we need to talk about it, because these are things that are happening to us. And we can never shout too much, because people are getting hurt out there. All
right. Let's talk of the society and the home setup. Okay, let's overlook the society for a moment and speak of the home setup. And so I come to my mom and tell her, you know what, this is what I'm going through. Some of them will tell you, you know what, soldier on, we also went through the same. That is what marriage is all about. There are times you come there, and instead of them offering a shoulder to lean on, they probably do not understand where you're coming from. They probably are not getting time, or, you know, sparing a moment to speak to you, to make you feel at home, to make you feel that, you know, you are special in your own way, and this is not a special case. It has happened to others, and they have survived. What do we need to do to make sure that that emotional support is accorded to individuals who've gone through any form of gender-based violence?
First of all, I do understand back at home, your mother, your sister, and whoever else, they will give you the best of what they know. So they took it from their mothers and everyone else. Vumilia, stick it out, you know. So what we are talking about is maybe looking beyond even just that family setup. We have counselors all over. In fact, counseling is one of the best things that you can give to yourself, because we are talking of somebody who has the know-how, somebody who has been trained to deal with it, somebody who will help you get a voice, because they are trained to do exactly that. And
so that means one should attend counseling sessions, even if there's no need that really triggers these sessions, that you can just say, okay, well, on normal occasions, how about I get a counselor and speak to them, even when there's really no specific need at that point?
When we are talking about, say, marriage, I encourage everyone, before you get in there, go for premarital counseling.
Okay.
You'll talk about these things right there. So when you start seeing some of these red flags, then it's easy for you to pick out and say, this is happening, and so I need help. Yeah. And when it has happened, then again, you're able to go back. But of course, if you're not sick, you don't need to see a doctor, so you don't go to see a counselor. But we can have groups where we talk about these things. Meet together as girlfriends, boyfriends, you know, talk about these things, like what really is this, and how am I able to protect myself if it happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. In the country, have we made notable strides towards addressing this? Because it was prevalent, it was extremely high, and it's even worse at this point of the pandemic. I have to agree.
Yeah.
But as a country, what efforts have we put to make sure that this is a game of the past, to make sure that, you know, people are enlightened on, you know, places that you can run to in the event that violence has been meted upon you? I mean, there are very many spaces for the women. I don't know whether we have as much for the men, those ones that they can consider as safe spaces, because true is that today, statistically, it has been proven that even the home is not safe for the woman.
In the police stations, most police stations have a gender desk, and they have been trained on the psychological first aid that they can give to this person when they come. They are sensitive that this is a hurting person, and so they are able to question them in a sensitive manner and support them. Even when it gets to the courts, our magistrates, they have been taken through courses where they are able to understand what exactly is this GBV, and they are really doing a good job in the law courts, and that has really helped, because many of these cases have been tried, and we are finding it becomes deterrent. Like when somebody has seen, hey, my friend, this happened, and yeah, they were locked up for this. So again, people start fearing, they don't go all that. Though we are not yet there, I must say, because again of a stigma. I've had an incident where we have worked with client, we have even gone to court, and just before, when this person now, in the middle of the case, they start saying, I want to forgive my husband. And that time we are talking, several ribs have been broken, the eyes stitched up, because, you know, and so much. And you're like, where did this come from? Because there's pressure from the family and everything. So we are still coming back to society, looking for how can we support this person. But even if you don't get support from your family, from the society, we are still saying you can make it. And so one of the things we are doing is looking towards economic empowerment, especially for the women, because without economic empowerment, they keep staying in those abusive relationships, because maybe I'm getting everything, my children are being supported. When I leave this, where will I take my children? I don't have a job, I have no income. So we are looking at it holistically. So economic empowerment, also helping them get an identity, understand who am I, you know, because most of them are so trampled upon that they've lost a sense of their value as an individual. Yeah, so that's one of the big things that is happening out there. Women are being empowered, get something. In fact, now we are reaching levels where now it feels like it's the boy child now who is more at risk now, because the women are becoming empowered. So because when you are empowered, you have a voice. You can say, I'm not going to take this, let me walk out and I'll support myself and my children.
As we make strides and as we make efforts on behalf of the women and to push them, to empower them, to remind them that, you know, you have a voice, you can speak and you against these vices and all that. I mean, are we leaving behind the boy child? Because the cases, you started by saying that you know what, it's about, you know, women who have been violated and all that. So who speaks for the boy child, and how best can we speak so at least we come to the same reading?
Yeah, there's a trouble, there's problem with the boy child. The boy child has been forgotten. We are taking our girls, encouraging them, they go to school and everything. The boys, they don't have a voice. You come home crying, I've been beaten. You are just told, go out there and man it up. So we are losing our voice, and they don't have a voice. And so this is again is leading to an imbalance in the society, where we are having our girls out there, they are soaring, economically empowered, they know their space, but the boy child no. So what is happening, they start feeling there's a lot of inferiority complex. A lot of them are feeling they don't match up. So even when they happen to marry, and maybe they marry up because the lady is doing better than they, that thing, they want to show you that, yeah, I'm the one in control. So violence comes to show you your place. And that's the danger now we are facing. That we need also to come out there and work with the boys, help them understand their value without it demeaning or messing up also on the girls.
The legal aspect, and we have perpetrators and we have the victims, we have the rights of the both of this, and you know, it's been a battle today. That, you know, you present your case of you know, gender-based violence, you still are the victim, but you know, years in, years out, in circles you're taken, and you never seem to enjoy justice. In occurrences where then, of course, there's some bit of movement that is going on as pertaining to your case, there is not much keenness on the rights of the perpetrators as well. I mean, how do we strike a balance, and where are we anyway generally as a country in terms of attainance of justice for the victims, and equally, you know, getting the perpetrators to levels where they can learn from their mistakes and, you know, be examples to the people?
There's a lot of good, I must say, still in the justice system, where we deal with the victim, we empower them. They get justice, and in most cases they are referred. I've seen referrals being made where they are able to get help. Like, for example, if you go to Kenyatta National Hospital, they are very big on GBV, you know, and a few of these places, they really are doing a good job. And also the perpetrator, because I've done counseling sanctioned by the court for the perpetrators, because clearly it looked this person needs help. So I think we are doing something, only that it's not big enough. Yeah.
It's, unless it comes home, in most cases people do not see the essence of addressing this and shunning this and condemning this, unless you're a trained counselor who understands that, you know, this is a professional angle or a professional eye that I'm having towards this. In most cases you don't find people keen to address the same and not keen to condemn the same. Let's talk about the young turks who are also going through this, because when you talk about gender-based violence, in most cases the assumption is, well, it's at that level of marriage, it's at that level of a relationship. It's much easier to step out of a relationship. It's harder to step out when you are talking about marriage. But these young girls and these young boys, you know, who are vulnerable to their uncles, vulnerable to their aunties, vulnerable to their teachers, vulnerable to fellow, you know, students or pupils. What more is being done to look at their troubles, because they are on the rise without doubt?
Okay, the younger ones, we are having teachers also, when they are doing the life skill training, because they do that a lot, it's part of a curriculum, these things are being talked about. And I have had children coming out and saying, I'm being violated in my home. In fact, there's a time I heard we were having some shows in Korogosho, and the children were calling in those toll-free numbers, and they are calling in to say this is happening. And it's quite impressive that they have been told in school, if this happens to you, it is violence. So it's happening, and in a big way, from the curriculum. The only trouble is that when we get to the higher levels, especially the higher institutions of learning, that's where I have problem, because it seems everything flies off the window. We are having what I would call, you know, that intimate violence. We were in a relationship, or perceived to be, and then things have gone south, and we are living together. I've really dealt with a lot of these things. We are having a lot of killings within our campuses. And of course it's muted, because who wants the institution to be seen in a bad light? But there is a lot of violence within.
But if these classes are being offered at a very tender age, why is it that the cases then at that level are on the rise?
They're on the rise because, number one, there's a need to relate. There's a need, like for example, you've looked for a sponsor. That is the most common case. So they are giving, you want to live a certain life which your parents cannot give you, so you've gotten a sponsor. So the amount of money and other goodies that they are giving you make you a slave to this person. I bought you a car, I did this, so you are mine. You do as I say. And so when you start like having any condition, then they come. So I think there's that thing of peer pressure also. If everybody else is having a relationship, then I want in. So without looking at what is it that I'm getting into. Then we have stress as well. Because most of these perpetrators you find are people who maybe came from dysfunctional families. So by that time they are already messed up. So they are hitting out at the world. And so they lure. I've had even strange things that are happening in these institutions, getting into oaths, covenants, blood oaths, that if you leave me, then we have to die, and such like these things. And it's on the high, it's increasing so much. So I'm thinking what has made our young people be more vulnerable is that desire to fit in like everyone else. That desire to be somebody, to be seen as if I'm normal. So that is happening a lot.
Well said. Thank you so much. Any spaces that we know of that we can talk to the person who's watching right now and probably could be going through any form of violence? They don't know where to go and report this. They don't know whom to tell. They are scared. Toll free line numbers, or spaces they can go to, or institutions that are out here to address the same.
I go again back to Kenyatta National Hospital.
Yeah.
They are very good, and it's open 24 hours. Actually, they do a lot of good work with the GBV cases. Most of the hospitals, actually, government hospitals, you are able to get help.
Okay.
And I have been encouraging people, if something happens to you, don't stay with it, go tell somebody. Walk to the chief, police station. Even at the chief's office, there is a desk that addresses that. Go to the police station, any police station. If that doesn't work, go to even the hospitals and you'll get help. And the other thing is, talk to a friend to support you, to take you. If it's not working, you get attention to yourself. Shout, I'm not okay. And you will get help.
All right, there you go. Thank you so much, Jennifer Muthoga, psychological counselor, for speaking to us on matters gender-based violence. It is happening, especially at this time of COVID-19. It's a shadow pandemic, but we all hope that we can get the courage and confidence, one, to stop those heinous acts, and above everything, to speak out when it happens to us. And together, we can be able to, discover or at least attain the gains that we have made towards making sure that, gender-based violence then becomes a game of the past. We empower ourselves, but that does not mean then that we leave the boy child behind. It was an honor speaking to you this morning. We still continue to talk of these matters. Remember our social media platforms, #morningcafe at Linda_Alela, TV47KE. We'll definitely keep interacting with you as we continue. Of course, this then has broadcasted live on these particular platforms. You can continue